Oh, I'm live. All right. So I just wanted to start by saying thank you for everyone who answered the poll. I got a lot of good feedback, and just thank you. Some of the things that were people wanted to talk about were eating disorders and marriage and relationships, and if like a loved one or a friend has an eating disorder, how to kind of help that person or help that person find the right help. So, just a quick about myself. I've been in recovery for about 7, 8, I think going on 8 years now. I've been married for 18 months. I've been in treatment twice, in 2008 and then in 2010. Um, and that's about it. So, I've been able to meet just hundreds of people suffering from eating disorders and from all spectrums. Eating disorders don't they don't discriminate on age, sex, gender, class, country. People from all over the world have eating disorders. So one of the things, I guess one of the first things I wanted to get into was eating disorders and relationships, and kind of how my eating disorder has affected my relationships in the past, and then my relationships now. Um, I guess one of the big things, and I'll just start off with this because things kind of wrap around this. Um, I think one of the big things that really impacts my relationship is trust, and kind of having an eating disorder, and thinking about trust in that way. Uh, Eating disorders are really like secretive issues, and a lot of people keep to themselves. Like sometimes your loved one doesn't even know you have an eating disorder. And for myself, like before I went to the hospital, and even like after the hospital in recovery, uh, there would be like the secrecy to the eating disorder, and kind of knowing what, like maybe not telling my girlfriend the whole truth. And one of the common things we'd go through is she'd ask, what did you eat today? Um, just kind of following up, what did you eat today? And I'd say, yeah, I had breakfast and I had lunch, and it went really well. And but it kind of goes to how much did you eat? How much was it? And that's kind of the part where some of, I guess, some of the lying or some of the eating disorder behaviors would kind of kick in, and people would say, uh, I had breakfast, but I probably didn't have that much. If I told, my girlfriend I had breakfast, maybe I had 100 calories or something. So it's that kind of truth or that dishonesty that really breeds in a relationship. Um, and out of it, I think it was been really tough because sometimes I'd have my partner in therapy sessions with me, and we'd talk about it, and it's hard to it's hard to say like how much is brought into that. Like if I lied about how much I eat, if I lied about how much I ate that day, does that also mean I'm going to lie about other things too? Adam, did you have breakfast this morning? Yeah, when I didn't have breakfast. And then, Adam, who were you on the phone with the other night? Things like that. And it's hard in a relationship to separate the two things. To separate, is this person being honest for just this one thing, or are they having complete just dishonesty about everything? To what point has the eating disorder kind of permeated throughout my life? Um, I think that's something like uh, my wife and I still struggle with today. Sometimes, if I'm having a tough day, she'll ask, uh, "Did you have lunch?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I had lunch." And we've been together for 5 years, so she knows everything about it, and she'll say, just kind of check in with me and say, how much was it? And I'll have to be honest, and sometimes it's that honesty. It's not it's having giving the full truth to the person you love, and not just saying, oh yeah, I had breakfast today, or I exercised today, but saying, telling how much you did. And I think that's really important in a relationship too. Just saying how much is that worth? How important is it? Um, uh, so Caitlin and I, actually, I think today is our 5 year anniversary from the first day we met. And somebody asked me the other day, how did you tell Caitlin you had an eating disorder? Was it like a big deal, like a coming out type of situation? And I don't remember, like, I remember it was probably within like the first week. And it was kind of, I think we were driving and she was like, oh, where do you want to go to eat? And this was 5 years ago, so I'd been out of treatment for a couple years, so still pretty early on in recovery. And I said, oh, I don't know, it's not a big deal where we go to eat. And she said, oh, how about this place? And I was like, oh, I don't know about that place. And immediately, like in my brain, I was going through, okay, what do they serve at that place? What can I eat for a certain amount of calories? Can I like maybe like what can I do there? Is it okay? Is that a safe place to eat? And then she was like, oh, do you want to go somewhere else? And I was kind of stunted about it. She was just asking where I wanted to go eat, and I just, I couldn't think of anywhere. And it was kind of those moments in our relationship that she was like, okay, so what's going on? Are you weird about this? Do you not want to go out to eat? Do you just want to eat something at home? And that's kind of when I was like, okay, I should probably just tell her, I should tell her that I'm in recovery for an eating disorder. So I just said, if I seem kind of like funky around food or something, I don't think I said that way, but I was just like, I've been in recovery for an eating disorder for quite a while, and it's something that I'm still struggling with sometimes. So, if things get kind of, if I'm kind of weird about stuff, sometimes I'll ask you about things, and it was a different experience, especially we'd been together for maybe a couple weeks, and I'm telling her that I have an eating disorder, and kind of gauging her response with that. Like, does she know what an eating disorder is? Because at that time, I've met people that didn't know men had eating disorders, and I'm like, okay, does she know what an eating disorder is? Does she know that guys can get eating disorders and what's going on with that? So it was kind of gauging her reaction and how comfortable she's going to feel with me, and if this is, maybe this is going to be a deal breaker, maybe this is it. But at that point in recovery, I decided to be honest about it and just say, what, this is what's going on in my life. So it was just kind of cool to see her reaction to that, which was really positive. And I think she just said, okay, this is who you are. It's not doesn't really change who you are. And I think if you struggle, or it's just important to tell me about that. So I think that was the first time Caitlin and I really had like an honest discussion about how my eating disorder impacted our relationship, and especially sometimes when she was like, oh, what do you want to eat tonight? And I would just get immediately flustered, because early on I didn't know. I knew like I should eat, but I'm like, okay, what do I eat? What do I know? And she thought, you're really, if I'm being like really weird about it. So it's some of those things that we've had to work through, and it definitely helped with the honesty at the beginning. Letting her know what was going on. If we're at home and she's, oh, why don't you, if I don't take her out to eat very much, if I'm just, being more secluded, and she goes, if it's something, why don't we go out to eat more often? Why don't, you take me out to eat, or why don't you go out to eat more often? You could think it's something else, like, she could start thinking I didn't want to spend time with her. She could start thinking, maybe there's something else going on, and so it's just been really essential to just communicate with her what's going on with mental illness, with the eating disorder in my life and recovery, and where I'm at, so we don't get any crisscrossed ideas or anything like that. And so it's and I also wanted to share a story about talking about things being crisscrossed. It was communication is a struggle. I think for any relationship, communication is a struggle. But adding on that extra layer of what if, like what else is going on in this person's mind at this time, that kind of adds another layer of something just being like confusing. So I remember, I think I told the story in a blog too. I just have it some written down here. We were at a church retreat before we got married, and we were listening to the priest, and he was talking about relationships, and communication and everything like that. And so he goes, sometimes, it's hard for men to communicate and it's hard for women to communicate. And he made the comment that, women are generally just kind of standoffish. And he also said, men are almost feel like they're just always standoffish all the time. And it just kind of struck me that there were already these like ingrained like gender roles that how people were supposed to communicate. And it kind of struck me as, geez, if you add another layer onto that, if you add mental illness onto that, and when somebody is ready to, if you're trying to be like intimate with someone, they can really take that a lot of different ways. If she's like trying to kiss me or something, and I'm just, she's gonna be like, what's wrong? What did I do? And it's hard not to take that personally. But especially, if somebody's has an eating disorder, really like, or body image issues and things like that, it's not always about the other person. Sometimes it's me feeling weird about it. Like definitely like early on too, it was, if I was having a bad day, it would be really like uncomfortable. So we had to communicate with each other, what was going on in our heads, if, if she was, trying to make a pass at me and trying to kiss me or something, and I was, just, oh, sorry, not today. But I would make that face, and like, how would you feel if you were my wife and I made that face to you? So it was, it really had to, we really had to talk to each other about that and just be on the same page about what was going on. And I think with that openness, it really helped out. It really helped out our relationship, not only how it focused on my eating disorder, but also just helping us out, and communicating and being open about what we're feeling, and kind of the extra level about mental illness and how that impacts it. So communication's tough in the beginning, and then also add on a little bit, and then it still can be kind of tough. So it's been interesting going through that, and definitely being in recovery too. It's been interesting to see it kind of through her eyes. We'll take a step back every now and then and it'll be nice to focus and say, kind of get an objective opinion, and ask her, how do you feel like I'm doing? How do you feel like, do you see me struggling at all? I remember before I went into treatment the first time, one of the most difficult parts for me was to take that objective opinion and to say, am I sick enough to go in? And I had to listen to people who love me. I had to listen to my mom, and I had to listen to my girlfriend and my brother and my close friends. And they were the ones that kind of said, listen, we're seeing these things in you. So we think you really need to see someone. So it's important for me to have that kind of relationship with my wife as well, especially in recovery, to kind of use her as that kind of objective opinion too sometimes, if I can say, how do you think I've been doing? Because, the eating disorder, sometimes it has a way of kind of sneaking in sometimes, and kind of, if it's been, kind of rocky, it's nice to check in with my wife and just see how I'm doing. So I think that's been really important for us. And I think if Caitlin would, she'd be here, she'd say the same too. She's got to check in with me every now and then.